think we are, even though it doesn't always seem like it, we are living in a very, very interesting environment. And despite having so many challenges, I think sometimes or more often than not, these challenges are also kind of, let's say, the basis for development, right? For finding solutions, for going forward, for being creative, right? So you have to take the good side of things. And, some people might say that, this is a very, very difficult situation. Things have been changing very suddenly and sometimes in a negative way. But on the other hand, I think it's in times of crisis where opportunity kind of rises.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the Engatica interview series. I'm your host, Kimberly, and we're really glad to have you join us today. We have with us a very special guest, and we have a bunch of questions that we're going to discuss with this person today. We have Panagiotis Kriaris, the Commercial Director, Head of Business Development at Unzer, and an international thought leader with us on the show. So very warm welcome.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Awesome. So before we dive into a crazy interview, let me tell you what the series is all about. The Engatica interview series is a powerhouse of insights from industry experts and influencers from around the world, a platform that provides the latest news on AI, automation, and technologies that will help you grow your business. So come be a part of our community where we learn, share, and grow together. My first question to you is what drew you to the startup and e-business space, and how has this experience actually informed your work in the finance industry?
Yeah, so I was, I know many years ago when I started my career, I actually happened to do an MBA on e-commerce. So back then it was not very as popular as it is today, I would say. So that's probably one of the first triggers. And the second one is I was also working back then in as part of my MBA in various e-commerce projects around Europe. So that was a very interesting experience. So then I got in touch with some startups. I was also employed in a startup at the time. You have to imagine that, let's say many years ago, what is a startup today is not what it used to be back then. So it was a bit of a different experience. But all in all, I would say is very it's a very creative process, right? To be in a position to challenge the status quo, to solve problems, and everything that has to do with technology for me is quite attractive. So, yeah.
Yes, of course. How do you actually approach innovation and strategy while building businesses and products from scratch?
I think that's a very interesting question because when it comes to innovation, I think two things happen. So in the first place, I think one of the reasons why companies are failing or not doing so well is a lack of innovation strategy, right? So that's the first one. Now, the second one is, so in case you do have a strategy, an innovation strategy, it doesn't mean that you are in a position to execute. So that's the second question. And I think starting from this kind of basis, what we have to say, or what I've seen as part of my experience is that, even if you have a business strategy and you also have an innovation strategy, that doesn't mean that the two are aligned, right? So it might be the case that you have a business strategy, but you have an innovation strategy and you have not let's say, taking the trouble and the processes to connect these two together. And that's, for me, that plays a significant role. And the other thing is, if you do have an innovation, because nowadays everybody wants to say that they have an innovation strategy. But the question is, what exactly this is, and how is this helping you in the direction of solving problems and adding value? Because at the end of the day, you do innovation for one thing, to add value, right? And adding value in this case means that I either, have a better product, or have more efficiencies, or have done something for my clients, for the society, right? So it goes in this direction. So unless you are in a position to kind of define this also within the organization and have very specific let's say, metrics and processes and ideas how we go about innovation, then it tends to become a bit vague, a bit of an uncertain goal. That's always a risk, because we, would like to say innovation, but if we don't kind of quantify this and let's say understand the details behind, it's very difficult for this to be successful.
Correct. That actually really helps a lot. What do you think are some very critical challenges faced by the financial services industry in the coming years, and how do you think they should be addressed?
I mean, I think it's interesting if we are now discussing about challenges in financial services, given all what's happening in the macro environment. I mean, we have been discussing about banks failing over the past weeks, over the past days, with things happening in the US now, with UBS taking over Credit Suisse. So I think that's that would be probably my first kind of question. So one of the main challenges is that the macro environment is always something that is not easy to navigate, right? So as we have seen over the past days and weeks, even for organizations that have been there for decades and are considered very, very stable, things can go wrong from one day to the other. So that would be my first point. Now, the second point would be, and it's probably connected to the first one, I think it's that as we are now going from, through a difficult situation, what we've seen over the past, let's say, couple of years is that companies now, especially in finance and especially fintechs, they have to go from a growth mentality to a profitability mentality, meaning that now investors are looking for sustainability, are looking to see that you have a viable business case, which was not always the case in the past. Correct. And for companies that have been set up in a very different mode and way of working, going from one side to the other requires, I guess, different skill set, and you have to balance things in a way that makes sense. So the change is not always a given. So that's probably my second point. Now, in terms of also going forward, I would say that what we find out nowadays is that companies active in the finance space, in the financial services space, they also have to deal a lot more with regulation and with compliance. And I think this is not going away. I think this is going to becoming more and more important, even for fintechs that used to be very or wanted to be very, very light, right? So I think that's a challenge that they need to they need to somehow be able to balance this in a way that makes sense. And most of the times, if you take, for example, compliance and regulation on the one side, and then you take on the other side the customer experience, which is very important, I mean, you're going to see that sometimes there's a trade-off, right? So the question is, how can you balance these two in a way that is successful, both for the business and for your customers? And when it comes to the customers, I would say that experience is very, very important, but we also have another point, which is who is going to be the one maintaining the customer relationship going forward? Because we've seen that, for example, in the past, where we used to have this vertical model in financial services, it was kind of a given that the traditional players will always have the customer relationship. But nowadays, with new models, with let's say, for example, with embedded finance, with financial services taking a backseat, it's not always a given, with, let's say, big techs also dominating some of the fields that are that used to be pure financial plays. So that would be an additional point. And of course, I think the way how you use technology to kind of adjust what we would call mass customization is also a challenge. I mean, we've seen lately how AI has been playing out as a key topic for across industries. I would say it's not only finance related. So that's always something that you have to show. How do you, on the one hand side, customize, and on the other hand side, how do you do this in a massive scale, in a mass scale, right? I mean, if you think about it, you have two different things by definition, mass and customization. But still, at the end of the day, you have to find a meaningful way how to balance these two and provide the customer experience to anyone that seems, let's say, tailored to their own taste and preferences and personal way of life. And at the other, on the other hand, do it in a way that makes sense in terms of having a business case, in terms of doing it with. So that could be, I would say, also a major challenge. And the last one would be how do companies and how do players in finance, they adjust to new business models. I mentioned before embedded finance. I'll probably have to mention the platforms. I mean, that's the platform model, I think, has been surfacing as the dominant business model of today and tomorrow. If you may, and for example, also in combination with concepts like open finance. I mean, this is not a business model, but I think it has a lot of impact on how you apply such models like the one that I was just mentioning. So these are a couple of points I would say that you might throw in the equation.
Correct. Yes, of course. Thank you so much. Actually, the points that you've really mentioned really pulled out a different perspective to actually viewing these things and situations that could arise, keeping in mind, the current situation of how financial services is doing. Could you share a bit about your experience about contributing to publications and podcasts that you do, and how has it actually helped you to, shape your perspective in the financial industry?
I think it's always interesting if you are given the opportunity to kind of, let's say, spread your thoughts, your thinking on a specific topic to more than your friends and immediate colleagues. So I was lucky enough to have this opportunity. I mean, the way that I'm most of the times trying to do this is the following, and it's probably also coming from a personal kind of point of view. So most of the times what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to address a topic, understand what's behind what it means, and also try to make it simple so that people can understand. Yes. And I think throughout this process, I also benefit myself because I need to also kind of force myself to dig down deeper, let's say, in the topics, try to understand the details and try to explain things in a way that makes sense, or at least explain my personal view, right? And they say that you're only in a position to explain something in a simple way in case you understand it quite well, right? So we think sometimes that we understand things well, and that goes for me, but then you find out that once you try to pose questions, and the more questions you ask, the more answers and the deeper you have to go. So it's not always the case. So I'm trying, I think it has been a benefit for me trying to address topics from various angles and do it in this way.
That is so true. I mean, even Engatica clearly aligns with what you think, because we encourage our community to really, unlearn what they've already known about things that the internet is, really blasting about, and to come and understand the topic from its root and actually hear experts like yourself, talk about different perspectives. It really opens up, the paradigm of certain topics, especially technology and automation. What do you see the future of the financial industry to be, and how do you envision yourself actually contributing to it?
I mean, when it comes to the future, I think that there is no one answer, right? There's no one model fits all. So I think there are so many dependencies that you cannot kind of predict what's happening. I think I mentioned before some of the some of the triggers, some of the parameters that I think will be influencing how finance will be developing forward. But if I have to choose, let's say, a couple of things that will be dominant, I mean, one is probably what I mentioned. So it's the use of technology.
Yes.
How this use of technology introduces new business models, how companies within finance are addressing this, and how do they do this not only with, let's say, what used to be up to now traditional competition, but how do they do this against other players that are now going in the same kind of, let's say, battlefield, if you may, and are trying to address the same customers, right? So I think this is, for me, something that is really interesting, but at the same time, it's quite challenging. And all these concepts that we discussed before, from the platform economy to mass customization to the macro environment, I think these are all coming together in terms of answering this question, if you may.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. Are there any other sound bites that you would like to leave our audience with?
In terms of other, I don't know, what do you mean in terms of?
Are there any other pointers you'd like to share with us, or you just want to summarize the whole conversation for us? Anything you want us to keep in mind?
Yeah. No, I think this was, this was quite an interesting short conversation. So I think the idea was to kind of be able to address in a short amount of time some of the points that are important for finance and for financial services nowadays. So yeah, I think to be honest, I think I've covered what I wanted to say. The only thing maybe is probably to add is that I think we are, even though it doesn't always seem like it, we are living in a very, very interesting environment.
Mm-hmm.
And despite having so many challenges, I think sometimes, or more often than not, these challenges are also kind of, let's say, the basis for development, right? For finding solutions, for going forward, for being creative, right? So you have to take the good side of things. And some people might say that this is a very, very difficult situation. Things have been changing very suddenly and sometimes in a negative way. But on the other hand, I think it's in times of crisis where opportunity kind of rises more than the average. So I'd like to take this view.
Yes, definitely. And I completely agree when you say that, when challenges really come across your way, it actually opens up new space for you to actually go and improvise, or, kind of look into the things that you kind of missed on. And that really gives a lot of scope for learning as well. I completely agree with you. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights with us. It was an honor having you with us and sharing your expertise with our community.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. For more content, subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon so you get access to exclusive content coming from thought leaders from around the world. We'll see you in the next episode soon. Stay tuned.